Are there any benefits to eating meat, fish, and dairy?
The actual opposite is true. Major problems have occurred since humans, in minority but in great part, have moved towards an animal-based diet. I'm involved with a gentleman who healed himself of stage 4 lymphoma on our program, who literally has just completed a documentary that should be out by the beginning of 2009, showing that approximately 40% of greenhouse gases, the biggest concern that all humans should have today, come because we choose to consume animals and use their milk, which is an absurd idea to begin with. We lost our way, but as I pointed out a minute ago, not all of us. Globally, approximately 60% of the world's population is primarily vegetarian still. The anthropologists are way off track when they say we were generally meat consumers and that we moved into eating vegan diets. The truth of the matter is we were vegans and in some cases vegetarian, and a small part of the population, generally in the developed countries. And when you look at the history of why that happened and how it occurred, it was a very calculated process of marketing from both the meat and dairy industry that convinced all of us, and most of your listeners there, I know they convinced me, even in formal education, that our bodies would literally fall apart without meat. And the only true protein is an animal source protein. This is completely bizarre by the mere fact that every drop of protein on this planet comes via the photosynthesis process. When the plant's leaf picks up the UV rays and converts it into amino acids. So every drop of protein on this earth is from actually a photosynthesis or a plant. Now when that's understood, and anyone who would like to challenge me on this, I would have a debate with anywhere on the planet, anytime. And we would like people to understand that our bodies, the human bodies, were built to eat vegan diets. Now I stand as a representative, the director of Hippocrates Health Institute, which over 52 years has put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people from all over the globe on a vegan diet. Many had been given weeks and months to live, and I don't mean a handful, probably 40 to 50% of the people who have come through our doors in 52 years have been given up to die. And tens of thousands of these people have recovered. All of us who consume this vegan diet do not age like the rest of the population does. We do clinical research on humans, not laboratory or computer models. And we are absolutely clear that the best way to get protein is from plant-based diets. And the best plant-based diet is one that has the highest amount of proteins, and that's living food, and germinated nuts, seeds, grains, and beans, and sea vegetables, and freshwater algae, greens and blue-green algae. And that's the bulk of what we've been teaching and telling people to eat forever.
What are the worst effects of eating meat, fish, and dairy?
Well, besides it causing the majority of global warming, which may be fatal for all of us if we don't put the brakes on, it is the #1 cause for catastrophic disease. If you look at my colleague's work, brilliant work, out of Cornell University, Dr. Colin Campbell. Dr. Campbell created the landmark study on human diet, and back in 1990 published the gathering of brilliant information called the China Study, where he pointed out that every man, woman, and child on earth should be a vegan, no animal food consuming human. He supported that with his half-century of work, and why it was called the China Study, interesting enough, is because he is not only a colleague, but a fellow American. In our country, when he proposed that we should tell people not to eat meat, he was pretty much run out of town. And the only government worldwide that was willing to support and allow him to work with the population to improve it were the Chinese, at that point, very much communist Chinese country. And he did the work there, headquartered with a European nutritionist and a Chinese nutritionist, and made models and comparisons to populaces around the world. And thank goodness for the listeners today, that was put together in a compilation, a smaller book, very readable book by the general public, called the China Study, about 5 years ago. So all the readers who are really truly interested in diet and how important diet is and how it causes disease, please read Dr. Campbell's The China Study. In there, there's graphs that if you read that book and continue to consume animal foods, you are really suicidal, because the graphs clearly show that people who consume animal foods and the level they consume increase cancers, cardiovascular disease, diabetes. I believe it contributes to mental illness, and we have wide evidence of this over the decades. We've done studies on this. Beyond all of that, it actually changes the mood of people. That's why if you go to cultures that are pretty much plant-based cultures, compared to the cultures that we're living in now, there is far less aggression, far more compassion. Unthinkable crimes like rape are minimal, if even existent, in some of these cultures. We're in meat-consuming cultures, commonplace. It's considered in Europe and North America that 25% of women at one point in their life will be raped. And you don't see even a vague statistic that's close to that in plant-based consuming cultures. Murder is much higher, and if you look at the countries that consume the highest amount of meats, it also propels more murder. If we're consuming an animal at a time of fear, we as scientists can show you that that biochemistry, the adrenaline, goes into the human body, and in part hormonally changes the psychiatry or psychology of an individual. So besides killing you and making you crazy, I don't know what else to say bad about meat.